Hey everyone, this is Blanton with Once Upon a Homestead, and welcome back to our channel. Today we're going to be discussing how to make your very own multi-bin compost system. Alright, so first things first, you're going to need some supplies. We recommend a good drill, and then some drill bits of the 1-inch size, the 3/4 inch size, and last we also recommend getting one of the 1/2 inch, and these are different drainage and venting holes. We use the 32-gallon trash cans, and we have 3 of these set up. You can use any brand or shape, it doesn't really matter. You can even use smaller size if you want to. It really comes down to how much you're going to need when you're doing it. So let's talk a little bit about what we're going to be putting in each bin and why. The first bin I suggest setting up is your wet bin. Your wet bin is going to contain all of your fruit and vegetable waste, as well as some pre-existing garden soil. The reason I suggest pre-existing garden soil in the base of it is because you're going to want to mix that into that soil. It just kind of helps with the breakdown process, and it creates a lot less kind of liquid oozing out of the actual bin itself, as the soil absorbs a lot of it. For wet bins, I would not suggest ever putting any meat or dairy products into it. Not only because it's going to rot and stink and just be generally gross, but it also will introduce a lot of bad bacteria like Salmonella and E. coli into your actual compost bin. And that's not something you want to be able to put into your garden. The other thing you want to pay attention to is temperature. As you're composting, you want your temperatures to increase, which means that as you're putting things that are damp and mixing into the soil, you're going to see the temperature rise up. So the temperature that you actually want is between 140 and 160 degrees Fahrenheit. And what that will allow is for the decomposition of the organic matter, but it will not allow bad bacteria to actually start propagating into your soil. Any hotter than 160 degrees Fahrenheit, and you're going to basically stop the metabolic processes of most of the bacteria, and then the decomposition is going to basically fail. So if that happens, you just need to give it a little more ventilation, and you need to increase the amount of times that you're rotating your bins. You can do this either by kind of rolling your bin around, or you can get in there with a pitchfork or a shovel and just stir it. And that's all I do, is just stir it. It works just fine to do it that way. And once you reach your optimal temperatures, it'll eventually stop heating up and just kind of stay stable. And that's when your compost is ready to be mixed into your dry media. The dry bin is going to be pretty simple. It's going to consist of dry products, and that's going to be things like hay, bird waste, grass clippings, even mulched up leaves and stuff like that. And it's anything that's not going to have a lot of moisture to it, but it can still be added to your compost bin. What I would suggest with that is mixing it again with soil to kind of help the process, because you still need a little bit of moisture to get the decomposition started. And you're going to want to mix that just like you would the wet bin, and let that heat up and start the process of composting. And once all of that has again stabilized in temperature, that's when you're going to want to move on to something else, and that is the mixture bin. And that's when you're going to get your final finished product. Again, when you're mixing the 2 bins together in your final bin, you're looking for a deep, dark, rich soil that you're going to also see a very stable temperature. You're not going to see a bunch of jumps in temperature or anything like that. And it should probably hover around like the 135, 140 Fahrenheit mark. And then at that point, your soil is done, and it's pretty much ready to go into your garden at any point that season or next. One last thing to remember is composting can create a lot of stench. So make sure your bins are located away from your house. That way you don't have to deal with that, well, at least on a daily basis. Only when you're really mixing it or digging it out to use it. But at that point, that pretty much covers what you're going to do with the insides. So let's go back into talking about what we're going to be doing with actually creating each of these bins that we just talked about. So with your drill bit, you're going to make these kind of starburst patterns in each of the 3 different bins. The pattern is going to be very dependent on what is actually going to be contained in each one. The smallest holes are going to be for the liquids. This one is going to have the larger holes, and that's going to be for your dry media. And this one is going to be for the mixture of both, which needs a little less ventilation because most of the composting has stopped at that point. It's going to look like this. The left-hand side is going to be the one that's going to have all your liquidy items, that has the most drainage and vent holes in it. The one in the middle is going to hold most of your dry stuff, like bird droppings and lawn clippings and hay and stuff like that. And then the one on the right is going to be the mixture of both of those items. It's going to be your wet foods, like your fruits and vegetables that have kind of rotted, coffee grounds, tea bags, those kind of things, and mixed with the hay and the grass clippings and the bird waste, eggshells, those sort of things. That's all going to be mixed together in the bin on the very right here. There's also, you want to add soil to that, and if you can, do some composting with some worms. And that'll help break all that soil down and get it ready in about 1 season to actually put into your garden. Now don't forget to put holes in your lids as well. Not only does that let venting happen, but you need to be able to cover them so animals cannot get into them. Because let me tell you, they will dig those apart and make a huge mess of things, especially the wet bins. For some reason they love fruit scraps, mainly raccoons, but everything can kind of get themselves in there and dig around. Always makes a bit of a mess, but make sure you put holes in there too. And once you get it finished, it's going to kind of be a mixture of dirt and various other food scraps. So just be aware, bees are a thing, and they will definitely get into these bins, along with flies and maggots and all that other stuff, that fruit and rotting vegetables will bring. It's perfectly normal. Don't be alarmed. Just be careful popping the lids open. Once everything is put together, it's going to kind of look like this. It's going to be a mixture of your soil, your yard waste like grass. There's coffee grounds and I think banana peels and those watermelon rind and other things mixed into this, and that's going to compost down, and that's going to turn into your garden soil. If you can get worms or get worms from your soil during a rainy night, put them into the bin. Even if you can kind of make sure that there's contact with the ground for the bottom drainage areas, that the way the worms can kind of crawl in there, that'll also help break down the soil and make it more nutrient rich as time goes on. But this is what you are going to end up with. It's a pretty heavy bin, so you don't really have to worry about it blowing over too much, but it definitely, it needs to have these holes in so it can drain any fluids, and a tight fitting lid. Remember, you want to mix everything together from your dry bin and your wet bin to make your final, your mixture. Composting isn't that complicated. It just takes a lot of time. That's all. So that's about it. So if anyone has any questions or comments, please feel free to, ask away. We're always here to help. And if you would be so kind to like, subscribe, follow us on Instagram and Facebook, we'd really appreciate that. Once again, this is Blanton for Once Upon a Homestead. Remember, we're all in this together. Take care.